Wind in the Willows.
Oh,
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll look up for it. Welcome. I think we need to make a start. So welcome to the Town Promotion Committee meeting. We have a long agenda so we need to get going. We have apologies from Councillor Alban, Councillor Hetherington, Councillor Crittenden. Do we have any other apologies? So we may be expecting people perhaps to join us, because I know some were at the TDC coffee evening and may turn up to join us shortly. Can I just remind people that this part of the meeting is being streamed and is available to the public. We will have a discussion about whether to exclude press and public a little bit later when we get to some items where there is some confidential information involved. Do we have any declaration of interest? I know Councillor Wing would need to declare an interest if she joins us, so I will do that on her behalf if she gets here. Anybody else? Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting, which was on the 24th of November. Have people had a chance to have a look at that? No. Many of us were here. Any problems with any in those minutes? Any corrections, matters of fact? Are we all happy? May I propose them as a true record? Somebody second? Pat, thank you. All of those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, so we're moving on to talk about events funding, which is the purpose of this meeting. And the first item on events funding is a report from the town clerk with regard to the discussion that we had at last week's meeting about Jubilee celebrations. Do you want to do it?
No, that's fine.
That would be really helpful.
So, as mentioned last week, the extraordinary council meeting made the resolution that's in front of you for 4.1 should the allocation of 20 grand from the events budget be put towards Jubilee celebrations. So this is broken down in front of you for award grants equivalent to £500 per ward, intended to encourage and support local community events across Ramsgate. That's £3,500. Jubilee beacons, 3 beacons at Harbour, Eastcliff and Westcliff, that's £3,000. And town centre activities planned to be proposed by the town promoter, 13,500, totalling 20,000. This expenditure has already been approved by full council. It's just suggested whether this should come out of the events fund, and also the suggested town centre activities, which town promoters' proposal will follow, whether that will include staffing over time as well.
And I think that will include some seafront activities, so it will be broader general town activities from what she told me this morning when I had a chat with her about it. Councillor Piper.
Thank you very much, Chair. Probably silly questions, but I need to ask them. The £20,000 on this left-hand page here, is that anything to do with the £20,000, which is the top?
It is the very same indeed.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get clear on that. As this report says, we've already agreed the Jubilee beacons, discussion and possible agreement on the 13,500. The ward grants of £500 was a tentative suggestion by Councillor Green last week. Is this entirely separate from the other ward grants and the now possibly allocated ward allowance money? So this is an entirely separate pocket all on its own?
My understanding is that this is a one-off fund specifically because of the Queen's Jubilee.
Yeah.
In addition
to normal ward grants.
Sorry to interrupt. It's not all the other stuff. There's a ward grant and then there's this. The other thing that we're talking about monies to councillors was to the councillors for expenses. There's only 2.
Yes.
Ward grant and this. So it's not all the other stuff. It's the other one.
Yeah. So we have our existing ward grants.
That's the other 2. With respect, it's the other 2.
We have our existing ward grants, and then we have the discussion that we had at a recent meeting was about councillors' expenses, which we haven't paid ourselves in the past,
There has been
and now agreed
tentative
we would.
agreement, and it's been put in the budget to spend 20,000 instead of 10,000 on those other things, and there is more than one. But that is yet to be ratified, and it's yet to have any agenda items brought to revisit that in the light of the now obvious evidence that we have been taking our ward allowance money for the last umpteen years. So I just wanted to make sure that this is entirely separate.
It is entirely separate.
Those two.
It is entirely separate, yes.
Thank you, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay, so has anybody got any questions, any comments, anything they want to say about this?
Yeah.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you. Do we have anything from the town promoter? That's awfully quick, I'm not expecting we do, but do we have anything from the town promoter with regards to what she thinks is going to happen?
She has been looking at the possibility of a two-day event, and she's been getting costings. There are difficulties around, because the previous proposal that we looked at for the four-day event and rejected last week involved things like a four-day fun fair. She's gone back to the fun fair company and said, could you do 2 days? But on the other hand, if you get an offer from somewhere else for 4 days, I understand that you're going to take it. So there's that sort of negotiation going on. Mm-hmm. So she's looking at what can be achieved and how it ties in with what certain of these other proposals for June events with, and what other organisations have mentioned to her along the way. So she's on with it, but obviously not very far on with it at this stage.
Of course, yeah.
Given the changes that have arisen. But she's quite confident that something good can be put on, but obviously she'll come back to us with more detail once she's got more information and options for us to consider. Anything that anybody wants to say, wants to ask? How do we feel about this? Are we all right with it?
This one,
The
20,000.
20,000?
Yeah.
Are we okay with it?
Yeah.
Can I propose that we approve that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody like to second? Thank you, councillor Ara. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Great, lovely, thank you. Right, so moving swiftly on, we're on to the second item here, which is to receive a report from the Deputy Town Clerk regarding Events Fund applications. There's a couple of things I would like to say before I hand over to the Deputy Town Clerk. The first one is that looking at the fact that we hadn't allowed I feel guilty about this because as Chair of Town Promotion I should have thought about the fact that the Queen was having a Jubilee and that we should have put something into the budget specifically for that. We've got demands on the budget that are much greater than we had allowed for when we set the budget, because we set the budget based on normal years and this is not a normal year. Looking at the number of applications we have and also the total amount, which comes to, I think, 90,000, we wondered whether members would be happy for us to consider at this point events running between April and August, and that we then, the town clerk has suggested that we will need to have an additional meeting at some point anyway to talk about, for example, some of the discussions we've been having with TDC recently about picking up other responsibilities, and that therefore we might be able at that full council meeting to have a look at the possibility of virement into this fund from elsewhere, to beef it up a bit, as it were, allowing for the special circumstances of the Queen's Jubilee year.
Members, you've also need to be advised that this is just 6 months worth of applications, so you haven't got anything here
We'd normally have
from
a September
October
meeting,
through to the end of March,
Yeah.
apart from the 2 RTC events, which is the switch on and the New Year's Eve fireworks. So this is a huge amount of money being requested for just half
the year. Yeah.
So bear that
So
in mind.
would members be willing for us to do that, to consider just the applications up to August at this meeting and put the other ones on hold?
Yes.
That would be
does that mean that, sorry, Chair, does that mean that we are now looking at a potential spend for this meeting of £48,000, not
I think we're
£97,500?
perhaps looking at a potential spend for this meeting at about £60,000, which is what we have in the budget. If we were to,
I beg your pardon, I thought that budget was the annual,
if we were to approve,
amount of annual money left.
The 60,000 is the budget. You've taken 20 from that budget for the Jubilee events and the beacons, so that's 40,000 is left for the year. That's why the town clerk has suggested we just look at events April to August. Actually, there's none in April and May, so it's June, July, August now, and then revisit the budget itself. Again, an extraordinary meeting, and then consider the other events, which is from September to December. Does that make sense? I've got a printed sheet.
It does. I was
Yeah.
just wondering, Chair, whether if that's 60,000 left on the year and we're only going to consider half a year's events, are we actually looking at, we've taken 20 out, so there's 40 left. Are we looking at 20,000 this evening? Or are we looking at 40,000 this evening? And we're going to try and find some more money from somewhere else
I think,
later on in the year?
Yeah, basically, we have now 40,000
40,000
left for the year
For the year.
as we stand now.
Yes.
But then we're going to have to revisit the budget to maybe boost the budget so that we can then look at those events from September and the ones that come in again to the end of March.
we'll need to,
With a slightly adjusted or vired budget, because we have been we've had applications here, they're asking for more money than they normally do.
because of bigger
Not,
events and so on.
Yeah, it's
yes.
just,
Dean and then councillor.
I was just going to add to that point, it really depends if you want to fund those events. I mean, if there's events there that you don't necessarily agree or want to fund, I mean, it's down to the committee. You could go through them and find that you only fund one. So it's really down to committee.
Thank you.
just this now.
So can I propose that we look just at the June to August events at this meeting, but that we come back as quickly as I'm sorry, Pat, I didn't.
I was going to say, these are nearly all, but not completely all, events that happened before. Last year, for example, and the year before, not all of them, but as we've said, they, quite a lot of them asking for more money.
Yes.
So shouldn't we work out what we're going to give before we,
It's a bit circular, isn't it?
Sorry,
yeah,
I can't remember, Chair, is there a limit on what they can ask for?
Not with this fund, the Ramsgate fund, yes, but not with this fund.
So it's a bit chicken and egg then, isn't it?
yeah.
So are we going to go through this item by item to
Yes.
decide how much, if at all, we're going to give these individual events?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes. But we are going to, well, the town clerk's proposal was that we put on one side the later ones and go through the other ones, the earlier ones, item by item.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favour of going about it that way? Thank you. Okay. Let's look at this one.
I know I'm in a minority, but no, please record my one, no. Because they only go up to September anyway, I can't see the point of shutting the door on September by stopping at the end of August.
We will come back to it as quickly as we can, because we are aware that some of those people who have put their application already are relying on knowing whether they've got the funding they've asked for or not, particularly with regard to bringing in match funding and that sort of thing. So we are committed to coming back to it as quickly as we possibly can.
Somewhat biased, Chair, I was thinking about Addington Street, which has just been
Yes.
moved off the table.
It has. So we've divided the list into the ones we're going to look at now and the ones we're going to look at as soon hereafter as we can. And we're going to go through these. I want to propose that we deal with these matters with having excluded the press and public. And I've had this slim volume handed to me to show me how we should conduct things, and it does say a meeting of the council must be open to the public and press, but it then says they can be excluded only by a resolution if publicity would prejudice the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business or for some other reason stated in the resolution arising out of the business to be transacted. Some of the information on these applications is, I believe, confidential to the organisations about their financial situations, about individual, in some cases, individual directors who have made loans to their organisations, etc. I don't think we should be discussing that in a public forum.
Yeah.
I realise that
Second then.
normally we want everything to be transparent and public, but there is delicate information here that I'm not comfortable about us discussing publicly. Councillor Piper.
Just a question, awkward as I am. Does that mean we keep the results of our debate and deliberations confidential as well? Because this is an open public process, applying for public money. I get that we might decide that for the purposes of debate, we shouldn't give away confidential information, but is it fair on the public for us to just print a piece of paper on which it says the following organisations have been given money?
Okay, what I was going to say was normally the debate isn't included in the minutes, but the voting on each application is of the funding. Normally, when an event is not funded, there is a reason given. So if it's for like no accounts given, or there's a reason.
Yes, if something's not for, or if something gets a lot less than it's asked for, or whatever, then we will explain. Yes?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes? Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. So can I propose exclusion of the press and public?
I'll second that.
Second, all those in favour? Opposed?